Hey everybody, I'm Jeff Siadek here with Joey Vigour.
Hello.
And we're going to talk today about the flood of games on the market.
Flood.
There has been, in the last few years, thanks to Kickstarter and everything else, a lowering of the barrier to entry to get into the game business, which in some sense is great because we got new games, but in another sense is terrible because...
It let me in.
Exactly. So, and really what I have to say about it is that I think it is great because we do want to have more new games.
Do we need 3,000 a year, though? That's the question. 2,000 came out at Essen. Another probably 400 or 500 came out at Gen Con. A couple, maybe 100 came out at Origins.
We probably don't need 3,000, but I liken it more to like the microbrewing industry. So you can't imagine that all 3,000 games are going to be carried in your friendly local game store. But just in the same way that you can't imagine that everybody who opens their own brewery is going to get shelf space in their local supermarket. So with games, when you're creating something new and there's a niche market that people are going to want, then that's great. The people that want that can get it, and you don't have to worry about whether you can get it into distribution. And if it turns out to be something really awesome that everybody's going to want, then it can find its way in.
Well, there's different ways for the market to support a lot of new games, and new branches of the market are opened up, just like we saw with what are the Harry's razors and stuff. Their whole branding is, we cut the middlemen out of the equation, and we ship the razors and the blades directly to you and stuff like that. It's kind of the same thing. That's what Kickstarter is. Kickstarter takes 5% and PayPal or Stripe takes 5%. So basically, the games get made, the games get shipped to the customers, and if you don't want to lose your shirt as a Kickstarter publisher, you don't worry about what happens after that. You have a few extra copies. Hopefully you didn't make too many copies. You forget about distribution and retail. You forget about Amazon. You make your games and you sell them, and that's it. You're done. You don't produce more than you need.
Yeah, that was 10 years ago. If you sold 1,000 copies on Kickstarter, you'd say, oh, well, I'll print 2,000, and then I'll sell the other 1,000 through distribution at conventions and whatnot. And that model has changed a lot to now where if you sell 1,000 on Kickstarter, you print 1,100 so that you have a couple leftovers in case there's mistakes or whatever. But you're not going to be just pushing that through the distribution system.
You could eventually sell most items if they're well branded through Amazon, but you'll be paying for Amazon ads. You'll be paying for Facebook ads to drive traffic to Amazon, where you're paying for more ads. It's not a pretty sight. Or you might do the bane of my existence, something I hopefully will never have to do, which is you'll do the dreaded discount mystery box game system, of which there's several that happen at conventions, and also they have some mailer services that do that. I'm not into that because I think if you want to support the arts, you don't want to pay for a Picasso, and even if it's good, you don't want to pay for a Picasso but get a Rembrandt. Actually, no Rembrandt fan would ever pay for Picasso, but that's a whole separate discussion into aesthetics. Yeah. I think there are markets that are opening up, but it is dangerous for a designer to think, okay, well, I can make money, not just creating a Kickstarter, which is a whole separate magisterium of learning that you have to do, but then also I'll be a publisher, and I'll sell a couple thousand or 10,000. I know at least one guy, he made 10,000 units of his game. Great little game. Sold 2,000 on Kickstarter. I believe it's 6 years later, he has 7,500 left. And our friend Rick, who unfortunately passed away recently, he told me, and I don't know if this is true or if he was joking, that the walls of his house are actually insulated.
His attic.
The attic is insulated with his unsold product.
Berserker. So they were going to make a big time movie out of Berserker, the Berserker property, and then they made this board game, and he printed 5,000 of them, and they sold 1,000 maybe or 500, but they never made the movie, and so it never went anywhere.
Yeah. So I definitely think there are avenues, but I would caution, if you're going to use Kickstarter, and this is just one of the methods to do this, you should probably just figure out Kickstarter and then sell just that right number of copies, and that's it. And then not try to get into these whole other realms, because you're going to have to start from scratch learning how to be a publisher, learning how to make distribution deals happen, learning how to sublicense to other countries, and then of course how to sell your unsold product on Amazon while you're still paying for all of your warehousing fees all over the world.
Yeah, I said 10% earlier, but really I think it's more like 20%. If you've got 1,000 customers, print 1,200 copies, and you're going to have a few that you have to send out refunds to, or separate games to, and review copies and whatever. And if it turns out that what you've got really is lightning in a bottle and people are just going to want this a lot, then you're going to have to go back and reprint. And the worst case scenario there is that, oh man, it was only going to be $10 a game, but if we did 5,000, it's only $8 a game. We're saving $2 a game by printing 5,000 copies instead of 1,000.
That savings will be gone in a month when you pay your warehousing fees.
Yeah.
You do not say, this is the, it's almost kind of a tricky bully tactic that manufacturers use. They don't try to, but because they save money in bulk printing, it's sort of like the lure of like printing more, and you're thinking, oh man, if I just make a little bit more, I'll save $2,000, I'll save $3,000. No, you won't. You won't. Make the right number of games, and then if you have some unbelievable deal, if you have a deal with Target or something like that, and they say we need 2,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 copies of your game, great. That's when you do a reprint. Yeah. Don't worry about all that. I do think ultimately, to go back to your original question, that the market can technically sustain these games, but what it does is it's a wake-up call for a lot of these, I don't want to call them failed publishers, because you could argue that me in 2013 was a failed publisher. It does sort of cause people to wake up to reality as far as, oh, I can't just become an Olympic sharpshooter, whatever the word is, with no practice. You can't just step into a whole new publishing realm and then compete with the big boys.
Yeah.
Asmodee and Hasbro are buying out all these medium and even large publishers. So you're competing against literally the biggest companies in the entire industry right off the bat. You have no experience as a designer in some cases. You certainly have no experience as a publisher. I mean, you, Jeff, you've been publishing for probably 30 years, and even you, I would say it's very, very difficult now. Your distribution deals are drying up.
I would say as a publisher, I'm a very good game designer.
Right. So how has it affected you as a small publisher? I mean, you've published maybe 25 or 30 games over the last 30 years, but of all the games that are still in print, how many of them still have mainstream distribution through Alliance or ACD?
That's just Battle Stations, Lifeboat.
Who Would Win Ended.
Who Would Win Ended. The worst game ever. And so, and all of my older stuff is still available. You can still order it through Alliance and ACD.
But they're not ordering more from you.
Yeah.
They're just, they have a few extra copies.
Yeah, and I have them at conventions. But it's like things that I printed 2,000 copies of, and I sold 1,100, and I still have several hundred left. So
yeah. So it is what it is. It's I think the market can sustain. I mean, I don't know how many more games it can sustain, because I think one of the bottlenecks is the reviewers. And so I think that's actually, it's sort of open season for new social media influencers to start becoming influencers in new ways. I noticed there's at least one board game reviewer site, which I won't name. Well, it's called Board Game, and then there's another word that doesn't really limit it that much, where they used to be a regular reviewer site, and then their reviews that were actually paid previews would be a different color. Like you would see the previews would be a different color. It's now pages and pages of paid previews only, which is fine. I mean, they figured out a way to sustain themselves, because there's so many games on Kickstarter, they need reviewers, and the reviewers can't review 3,000 new games a year. So now these newer reviewers that get fewer views, but, they do a pretty good job, you can pay them. And I don't really have a problem with that. I think the market opens up new avenues for everybody, not just for the game designer / publishers.
Yeah.
But like I said, with supply and demand, if there's too much supply of different games and not enough demand, you're going to have to figure out new ways to sell these games. If you design a game about kittens, you're going to have to figure out ways to market it, not just to game players, but maybe to kitten people or whatever. I mean, you just have to keep pushing and pushing, because you're up against a lot of competition.
Yeah, I keep thinking I have to go to marine stores and try to get Lifeboat in there. I think that'd be the perfect gift. And if you're buying a yacht and people are going to bring over a yacht warming party, they should bring over a lifeboat. So that's a little plug for my game, Lifeboat.
Well, we're almost out of time here with the cards, so let's wrap this up. What do you think about this? Do the 10-second wrap up.
It is always exciting when strange stuff happens and stuff keeps moving, and there will always be room at the top for great games.
I agree.